Hey folks, Steve here with another Korean War video for you today. We will be doing scenario 4, which is sort of the, I guess, last chronological specialized scenario. Technically, there's a scenario 5 that combines the early war stuff. This is scenario 4, the United Nations Resurgent. Um, and so this particular scenario is uh, in 1951, after the communists have pushed back down the peninsula, the UN sort of retreating and reconstituting itself, where the communists had retaken Seoul, and now there is a new defensive line. And at the start of the scenario is this kind of the situation is structured such that the UN will push back and the goal will be to get to or do better than history and get basically over here. So push this way. Um, and with this scenario, you can kind of see that there is a coherent line that runs from the east coast over here, slightly off camera, through this line here. And the communists have, a number of divisions, some North Korean, many Chinese here, some a little further back, some along this line with some sort of, I guess we call them reserves. There are some additional units that are way over here. There is a map edge in this scenario. This is similar to the last one we just played. Anything that gets pushed beyond this line, which I'm using the player aid to help mark, is destroyed. There are a few Chinese divisions that start over here and they're going to come down. These are like the reinforcements that would come in at the, after full Chinese intervention. When you look at the number of divisions that are actually near the front, it's not even that many. I mean, there's basically 15 Chinese divisions, which means like a dozen have been destroyed by this point in the fighting as the things have gone, as units have traveled south and all of that. And some North Koreans that have kind of managed to come together a little bit in some form or another. Um, Now, what's interesting with this scenario that is different from the last one is this scenario actually bothers to give the UN their asset resources, which for whatever reason in the Chinese intervention scenario they did not have. They were not assigned any. So we have the non-armor assets, but we also have armor assets, and I put them on top of the divisional unit just to help me see where the assets are at. So they're kind of spread out here, where predominantly the main, basically each US division has an armor asset and then an additional non-armor asset, and then some of those scattered British Turkish regiments are around as well. And there are basically 4 South Korean divisions that are in place, 3 on the eastern frontier, and then 1 supporting the clear terrain over here on the way to Taijan and Seoul, or that sort of road line here. Um, the other thing is that's interesting, and I guess really this scenario is the closest to the full rule set. So the game frames the scenario as introductory scenarios. And I guess if you were building up to this point, this scenario incorporates the most regular rules of all of them. So the assets matter. We're actually going to do the air phase, and there are a bunch of air units that are, it's pretty close to what it would be in a campaign game, or is what you would have in a campaign game to allocate for your different options. Um, and there will be supply depots on the map. And at startup or setup, there is one. They've got the depot, the 3 depot, already on the map with 1 supply point. And the reason they do this is sort of the implication. It's not stated why it's this way, but it is this way for this reason. Is that when we go to roll for supply, whatever the UN rolls and supply points they get will be added to the one that's already here. And so the game is kind of setting it up that it is feasible that on the first action phase, the Allies will be able to do something like an accelerated commitment, or even an offensive commitment, which I've not done yet. We've not done a real offensive commitment in any of the playing I've done so far, because we've just not had enough supply points. I didn't save any up. I've constantly been on the action to try to use it so we don't lose the opportunity to make good use of it, right? So there's a high chance that the UN forces will get a really good offensive commitment or accelerated commitment that will start things off with a good bang to push the Chinese communists back. We will place a depot for the communists, but that will be up to the communists to decide. Technically, we could also relocate this depot. I'm not sure what's going to make the most sense for that at this point, but either way, those supply command ranges will matter because we're dealing with stuff in the mountains over here that makes things difficult to tie back mountain ranges. And it'll be easier over here where there's more of a road network. Obviously, the Allies want to get Seoul to kind of have the nice concentration of the road network and rail network. In terms of special rules for this scenario, there's not much. So the UN player can assign their air units to interdict missions in all provinces of North Korea, even those off map. So we're just using the province map to dictate that. I'll show that here in a little bit. Both terms are still winter, so there's still limitations on how many close air support units can be used and various die roll modifiers because of winter. We can't make any amphibious assaults as the UN, and I mentioned that boundary line already, and they're just calling out that yes, both sides will use depots. The other, so it's really kind of straightforward. Like I said, a lot of the normal rules apply here. Nothing too special that we need to keep in mind. We can kind of operate with the same mentality that we would have had in the campaign game. This one does have its own victory point rules that keep this from, like, you can't play the rest of a campaign, same as the last scenario. There's no jumping off point to play through the rest of the campaign. This starts on turn 9 and goes through the end of turn 10, so there would only be 2 more turns after this anyway in a campaign situation, so maybe not a lot of stuff lost there. So the way this works is the UN player is going to be the one tracking victory points, same as the campaign game, but different from the last scenario where it was the communists who were counting victory points. And we're going to get points for destroying units as well as controlling certain cities. And we may lose victory points if our own units are eliminated. So that's kind of a different thing from even the last scenario where it didn't really matter if we lost anybody other than maybe losing a unit that could cross the border for more victory points. So for each communist division we destroy, we get a victory point. If we can get control of Seoul, that's worth 5, so that's kind of the big one. If we can get Incheon and Yeongdeungpo, that's a few more. And then any North Korean cities we capture over the 38th parallel will be worth some more as well. If there are communist units in Cheongcheong and Gyeongsangbuk-do, which okay, so let me adjust the focus. This province or this province. So if the Chinese manage to push the UN back or advance into it, and they already have a couple of units here, these two that are in the Cheongcheong province, they will, we're going to lose victory points for that, but I think it'll be relatively easy for the UN to push these guys out. So only if something goes catastrophically wrong will we have to really worry about that. And then each destroyed unit is going to be negative victory points based on what we lose. So we want to kind of minimize our losses as best as we can. That was kind of the Ridgeway strategy, just hit them hard, but keep our losses from being too high. And then the victory point thresholds, basically for the UN to achieve a victory, they need at least 12. So they're going to need to take back some cities, ideally destroy a few divisions, keep their own divisions from being destroyed, and they should be okay. Now, I do want to look at this. It seems like when they talk about UN division, that includes Republic of Korea units. I'm not sure if there's a true distinction there or not. I'm trying to make a comparison. Ha. Okay. Maybe what this okay, because I'm looking at the last scenario too, and I'm like, oh, do you not get victory points for eliminating Republic of Korea units? But I think you do. So last scenario we were probably 30 victory points, not 24. So I'm gonna choose to interpret this as saying that uh, each UN division that includes Republic of Korea. Might have to try to look at the game definitions and glossary to understand, like, do they consider that a distinct subfaction or not? But it seems like to me we would count the Republic of Korea as those units. So something I'll have to look at. I may have interpreted that wrong for the Chinese intervention scenario, and I should have counted what Republic of Korea divisions we destroyed for victory points in that one. I will play for this one that any destroyed Republic of Korea units will count against the UN. It's part of their army. Like, it's not those lives are worth something. So I'm going to count it, and I'll make a comment on my previous video that retroactively uh, counts it for the other one. Still meant in the previous China intervenes scenario that the communists lost. They didn't get 40. They got, I guess, would have been like 30. So they didn't get there. But yeah, so there you go, guys. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put a pause. That was sort of the intro, introducing this scenario. We're going to hit the air phase and a couple of other intro things, and we'll run through. This is going to be a 4-action phase scenario, so this video will be a little bit longer. I'm going to try to keep it all to one video, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so starting off the scenario, we do just start a whole turn on turn 9, and we get a allotment of air forces, pretty much what we would get in a campaign game by this point. And I have them allocated like here, using a whole bunch to try to get as much suppression as possible. These guys to also do supply suppression, or supply interdiction, but to also try to put restricted road movement on some of the reinforcements that are coming down from the north, and then these guys just to have somewhere to go and add on. Now, unfortunately, these series of die rolls went not so well, and the interdiction level is only a 2, which ended up mattering because the communists managed to get pretty decent supply rolls. And I'll cover that in a second. Here are the 8 planes that we can use for close air support, which gives us 15 close air support points, which is a pretty good amount. That's pretty good for the turn coming. I've tended to use CAS on defense only, and I may still do that because the communists still have attacking power in this scenario. At least it seems like they do. Where I think the rest of the bonuses for the allies are going to come from armor, and that sort of thing. But we'll see how it goes. In terms of the actual supply situation, try to get a spot here where you can see everything pretty well. I split the communist depots, and what I realized is that over here the supply table is worse, and over here it's not great but not as bad. So I put a 2 depot over here. I put a 1 depot here, and that actually paid off. I rolled well enough to get a single supply point in the east and a single supply point in the west, and I spent both so that across the front the communists have limited commitment, which is good because it means that they can attack and defend with regular value, which will help them either way. It would have been nicer to get like much better die rolls, but I think given the circumstances, that was the best we could get. The UN, by comparison, managed to they rolled low, and they only got 1 more supply point, but I elected to spend both to get accelerated commitment. So they, for primary range units, which some of these guys may not benefit from it, they're going to be 1.5, and we know how deadly that can be. UN forces having any sort of attack bonus just makes them juggernauts against the relatively weak defense factors of the Chinese division. But the initiatives come out to be equal. So it's 2 supply points spent versus 2 supply points spent. So in this situation, we use the normal rule, which is the communists get initiative on ties. I'm looking to see if there's any sort of special rule there, but I'm not seeing any. So it is technically going to be the North Korean / Chinese initiative first for this, and that's just going to be the way that it is. And then we didn't do reinforcements. I'll just roll for that very quickly. This should be pretty simple. So the North Koreans are going to get a division in, let's see, where would they want to put it? Yeah, probably, well, I'll put it in Wonsan. So yeah, the North Koreans are going to get one. Let me just make sure. Oh no, I'm sorry. They don't. They don't, because of penalties, because technically it's turn 8 or later. They rolled a 2, -4 is -2. So the North Koreans don't get anything. The South Koreans will roll, and there's a -1 modifier for the loss of Seoul, and they don't get a reinforcement either. Okay, so with that, I think we can just get right into the action phases again. Due to the tiebreaker, the communists will go first. So I'll go off camera here and take care of the nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes of moving everything around. I'll show you the aftermath of the first action phase, and we'll see who's made progress. Okay, here we are after the first action phase, and I mean, it's generally been a pretty good one for the UN. The North Koreans over on the eastern side tried to take an offensive, and they didn't roll well, and that left them susceptible, a few counterattacks, and I don't think the UN is too worried about that part of the line. Along here, you know, not quite stalemate. The UN forced a unit back, and it retreated so as not to be destroyed, with other units coming forward to kind of hold the line. But in this sort of, you know, cluster action around Seoul, the North Koreans still retain control, but only just barely. And the UN forces are operating across the river there. The UN forces did grab Incheon and Yeongdongpo, so they got some victory points for that. They are, well, we'll see if they take Seoul back. It could be a near run thing, honestly. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's going to go. And what I think may end up happening is that the North Koreans are going to concentrate their depot back here to supply both ends, kind of pull back this way, and then get reinforcements that are still kind of coming down the corridor to help around here. That interdicted road movement that I put down definitely slowed those reinforcements. So I think just on how well they performed so far, the Allies have racked up 10 victory points. That's 4 from the cities, and then they eliminated 6 communist divisions this turn. And they've not lost anything yet, and they forced the communists away from the provinces that could give negative victory points. So far, really so good. If they can just manage to get through maybe removing a couple more units, reclaiming Seoul, that's going to give the UN a victory, and then it's just going to be a question of how victorious are they. But much like the campaign, like I think it might be worth just playing through the whole thing, because you never know what's going to happen. And if the North Koreans can do some possibly near suicidal counterattacks to reduce the UN units on the board and knock them off, then that could give them an edge. I will say I did co-locate these British and Turkish brigades so that they can form up into their division. And the UN has taken a couple step losses in a couple places, but not enough to actually lose a unit and basically lose a victory point. So So far, so good for the UN. Whether or not these reinforcements are going to make a big difference, I think is, essentially remains to be seen. We got to watch out because the North Koreans are going to stack up units hex to hex to hex. So if we eliminate something, take the hex, they're going to likely be immediately, ready to respond with a counterattack. And that may be one of the other strengths of the Chinese that I have not utilized well up to this point. Um, anyway, so we're going to go and move into the second action phase. I'll go ahead and just do all the supply stuff, and then I will enact the second action phase and show you the aftermath of turn 9 before we go into turn 10. Okay, here we are after the end of turn 9, the second action phase, and you can already see, the Allies are on their way to a pretty significant victory, I think. I don't think there's going to be much that's going to reverse the fortune. Basically, the communists are just, they were trying to hold this river line, but you can see we got into Seoul. We've made a number of crossings, so we're kind of over the river, though that was a tough nut to crack. And we're basically, I mean, there's a chance for some counterattacks. Certainly, that is possible that we'll see that. But I do think generally the advantage is to the UN. They are sitting at 20 victory points for what is basically 11 destroyed divisions and then the control of the cities so far. I could see that start to rise. We do have the British Turkish division took a step loss defending Seoul on a counterattack, but they managed to get away with that. And just so. So overall, I mean, it's looking really good for the UN. I don't think much is going to change in turn 11. I just don't see it being something that we're gonna see reverse itself, to be honest. But I'm going to go ahead and go through the turn 10 first action phase and kind of see the result. I suspect, unless die rolls go really wonky, these guys will have been pushed back out and away from Seoul. Maybe we'll have destroyed a couple more units. If the North Koreans get initiative, they may pull back. I could certainly see them doing that because they can trade space for time at this point. I don't think they're going to get Seoul back. So for them now, it's going to be more about can they retreat to a line and keep the UN from getting any more victory points. Okay, here we are, guys, at the end of the first action phase. So really, I mean, I'm not even done with the first action phase, and I think I'm just going to call it here. The Allies are sitting at 23 victory points, far above the need for decisive victory. They would have to lose several units. And I just don't see that happening. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 8 communist divisions left on the board, and basically, I don't think, and some of them are reduced, heavily reduced. All right, maybe there's 9 actually on the board. That's my bad. Some of them are reduced. Some of them aren't going to be able to put up much of a fight. And from here, if the Allies decided to just dig in at the 38th parallel, they would win a decisive victory. Now, I don't know what that means in terms of the geopolitical standpoint if we're not surging forward and taking territory, but we could probably do that too. We could certainly, the war could resume a mobile aspect because if we just kept pushing, we could probably rip apart the rest of these guys and head north. So I'm having a hard time playing as the communists in this game, and I don't know what. In some ways, I kind of know what I'm not doing right, but even when I really have tried to make a better go of it, I'm just not doing very well. We got a couple of times it looks like we were going to get some good punches in, but we just can't seem to surmount the UN advantages. So I kind of wonder, it's hard for me to tell because maybe I'm biased. I'm a little worried there's a balance issue against the communists. And I would be very interested to hear from the folks who have played this game before, especially if you've played the current deluxe edition, so that I'm not the only one talking about this. Do you feel like the balance is there or no? I really feel like the die rolls are still kind of bad for the communists, they did okay a couple of times, um, but I don't know if I'm just not utilizing them correctly. That might just simply be it. That I'm not hitting the right things, or I'm not maneuvering them in the right ways to get the greatest benefit. And maybe that's the key to my sense of inability to make progress. So if I'm walking away from my playthroughs and prepare for the review, that's the only thing I'm kind of worried about is the balance. Is it too balanced in the UN's favor? Because pretty much every scenario, the UN has done very well, even when they're losing. I mean, from the China intervenes scenario, but the armor is pretty strong most of the time. I mean, sometimes it isn't, but it is a lot of the time. Very, very helpful. Um, I mean, we certainly took step losses in this scenario of the Allies. We almost lost a couple of units, but it just wasn't enough to have made a significant difference. Even if we lost one or two divisions entirely, it wouldn't have been enough to change the momentum of the game scenario. So I'm just not sure what to make of that. Um, if you guys are experience something different, or there's something that I'm missing here. I mean, I think one thing I should have done is I should have been entrenching a lot more as the communist. It tended to be that the UN across all the scenarios and the campaign game tended to use entrenchments well, and it felt like the communists could have done it more, and maybe that would have helped them. And if a couple of combats went pear shaped for the UN, that's when a good strong counterattack would have come up. Um, so I don't know. In this last action phase, when I'm calling it, the communists had limited, the UN had accelerated commitment, so that kind of made a difference too. Generally, on the whole, the UN had better supply roles this scenario, so they tended to have better combat values all around, and they could just operate better. So there's something, I don't know if it's just when I use the UN and I'm just doing better with them, or that the communist units are just kind of a little too weak on the defense, where I can kind of just shred them, and I'm not even that worried about losses. And even if I guess if I take one, that sucks, but or I just got lucky. And I do think it's entirely possible, if I look at the band of luck that the UN has had while I've been playing this game, I think that's been significant. I'd also say that I rolled zeros on this die more than I have ever rolled zeros in maybe one other circumstance of my gaming history. I've rolled zeros and ones so many times on that die. And I know that there's this is confirmation bias. I think I see zeros and ones more, but truly, truly, I think I have seen too many zeros and ones, and I'm very suspect of this die. Okay, that time it didn't do it, but I don't know. I just have this feeling, and it tended to be the communists that would get the zeros and the ones on their attacks, and they would eat step losses, where that didn't happen nearly as much as the UN. I will say in this scenario, the luck was a little bit better for the communists. They did get some high die rolls, which contributed to some step losses on the UN side, but they were never experiencing the height of modifiers that the UN routinely gets. Um, so I don't know. I feel like that's a challenging element. Like, is there ever a time when the communists can actually, in a real campaign scenario, be pushing back against the UN, right? Is the UN player ever going to make the mistake of spreading out in North Korea? Probably not. And will then the communists have enough oomph to consistently beat up on the UN forces? And I'm not sure. So I like the way this game plays. I think the systems all work really well. I think it's a well crafted game. The balance, I just am concerned about it. And I don't remember, I don't know if there's been ever chatter about balance on the old version of the game on the forum. So I might poke around and see, has anyone had balance issues? It could just be I just had a massive string of bad luck, and that's just the situation that I experienced. And so I like seeing the UN win in this war. So what can I say? What else can I do? It's as good as I can get it. So there you go, guys. We played through the UN Resurgent scenario. Granted, yes, it was called UN Resurgent. Sure enough, they did become resurgent in a big way, performed very well, retook the capital. Seemed like they would be on their way of rolling all of the communists back in North Korea. Maybe the geopolitical perspective of that would shift things to a negotiated peace even after all of that. Who knows? But that does it, guys. I'm done playing the Korean War. Joe Balkowski's The Korean War Designer Signature Edition from Compass Games. The next thing on track for this is the big review, and then possibly a comparison video between this and Korea Fire and Ice. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Leave your comments in this comment section down below. Let me know what you think, or if you got strategy tips. I'm happy to hear them. And until the next one, take care. Keep on gaming.